Alright, so in this New World video, I want to cover two important topics, at least important topics for me. And the first one is going to be hard drives. The second one is going to be controllers. Now they're in that order because obviously I think more people have interest in hard drive issues than they do in controller issues, just because this is a PC game, so of course not everyone's going to be playing on controller. But if you're like me and you've mainly been a console player, then controllers are of course going to be important. And of course, hard drive issues, one of these issues that we tend to forget about that actually has a very important impact on gameplay, can have a very dramatic impact on gameplay. Now, for hard drive issues, what we want to make sure is that, we are actually looking where our game is being installed on Steam. And this is something that I ignored, I forgot about, I don't really, deal with on a regular basis, so this wasn't an issue for me, So go to your settings, go to your downloads. So settings, downloads, and then make sure you go into your Steam library folders. Now here you can see I've got 3 hard drives listed. I've got my C, my D, and my Z drives. Now obviously C is just your standard drive. My D is actually my MyBook. It's an external drive. It's a 5200 RPM HDD. So this is basically where all my games go, because most of my games that I play are older games. They're not things that I'm not generally playing the newest things on Steam. I'm just kind of playing whatever I like, the older games that I like, especially the strategy-based games, and I don't need a great hard drive for it. But because I did consider that there might be some games on the PC that I would actually play, especially like some of the newer games, I did install an SSD into my actual PC. And that's where the partition for my backup Z drive comes in. Now everything just natively goes into my external drive because, like I said, everything's generally speaking older. However, this is also where New World went. So if you do need to move it, right, all you need to do is just click on the actual game itself, just give it a check mark, click move, and then just select the drive that you want to move it to. And that's all I had to do to actually correct this issue. Now, this is a pretty big issue because hard drives, like I discussed in my Cyberpunk 2077 video, actually have a huge impact. Like here in this footage, this is actually going to take quite a bit of time. This is footage from my basically initial loading into the game with my character, and this is on my external 5200 HDD. It actually took like a minute and 20 seconds, so 80 seconds total. And what I discussed in the Cyberpunk 2077 is a lot of the visual glitches, a lot of the bugs, a lot of the loading time issues, just a whole variety of issues and crashes especially, were caused by consoles having very, very crappy HDDs, and relatively similar to my external drive. So having an external drive means that you are going to be, generally speaking, having longer load times anyway. But when it's a 5200 RPM drive, you're going to have even shittier, slower load times. And because of these load times, these load issues, the priority issues that the game sets for loading different things, graphics and whatnot, it causes a problem, basically just a mush where not everything can get loaded in properly. And so not only does it take longer, but the graphical priority of certain things doesn't take precedence. So you kind of end up getting left with, a lot of missing assets, floating mannequin heads. You can get a lot of crashes because the game can't load certain things that it needs to fast enough, and that can cause a lot of issues. Now, switching to the SSD that I switched to, it took about 30 seconds to load all the loading screen. And once I finally loaded in, graphics were pretty much all done. It didn't really have any major issues. And of course, by switching to the SSD, what I also fixed was about half of my, game freezes. So I still do have the occasional freeze, generally speaking, maybe once a day it'll freeze, maybe twice, depending on what I'm doing. But largely half of my crashes and freezing and all that stuff have been fixed by just simply switching it to the correct hard drive. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is controller support. Obviously, if you haven't, really messed with controllers, Steam does actually have pretty fantastic controller support. It's all just natively designed into the actual Steam ecosystem. But if you're like me and you haven't really been active on Steam, you might not, know these things. I mean, it took me a while to kind of figure out how to do this stuff, or at least how to set it up properly. But if you are interested in controller support, it's pretty simple. All you're gonna have to do is just go to your library, click on New World, open up your settings there, and basically just click on Manage. All right, once you get to Manage, you're going to click on Controller Configuration. This is really easy. all you're going to do is it's basically just plug and play. So all you have to do is just kind of change around the presets that they have. I didn't really like the presets, but you know, it's really up to you how you want it. I kind of changed this more for action-based gameplay. So I've got my, you know, right and left mouse click on my triggers. That's basically just, you know, block and stab. My left bumper is going to be my weapon swap. So I'm going to press it for weapon 1, which will be basically keyboard binding to number 1. And then I've got a hold for my left bumper, and that's going to be weapon 2. So that'll be binded to keyboard number 2. So press for 1, hold for 2. That's pretty simple. Now, for my right bumper, this one I'm actually thinking about changing because I don't really use it that much, but I guess you could possibly use it if you're more into maybe PvP. But again, it's a press for crouch and a hold for prone. Now, one of the more important ones is tab. Obviously, that just accesses your inventory, and that's pretty much my start key or my start button on my controller. Now, for my movement, all pretty much simple, you know, forward, left, right, back. But for sprinting, it's basically just a press, you know, so I can do the auto sprint by, you know, linking it to the equal sign. And then, of course, I've got M, which is linked to a hold. It's kind of, you know, like a second hold, and that'll bring up my map. Now, for my directional pad, you see I've got up 3, left 6, right 4, and down 5. So this is basically just my consumable wheel. So if I press up, I'm using my, you know, number 3 button. If I press right, I'm using my number 4. If I press down, I'm using my number 5. And if I press 6, I am using my number 6 potion or whatever I have. Now, if I hold up or if I hold down, that's my scroll in and scroll out. So that's what I use for the map. That's what I use for, you know, just the general camera angle, that kind of stuff. Now, it's not as good as the mouse wheel. It was really not. But, you know, I make do with what I got. And then, of course, if I press and hold my right directional pad, that actually is F3, and that brings up my fishing rod. So that's pretty handy. Now, I'm not exactly sure what shift does. I haven't really ever found a use for it. I think there's some mention of shift in the game in the control menu, but I've never used it, so I can't say what exactly that would do. I thought I would probably use it more, but I haven't. So looking at it, I do kind of need to go back and just reevaluate some things. But, you know, it's on back burner out right now because it kind of just works. All right, so looking at my actual buttons here, I've got A for E. So A is my action button, just, you know, pretty much activate things. And then, of course, I've got my 3 abilities tied to X, Y, and B. So obviously my first ability is going to be Q, and that's going to be X. My second ability is going to be R, and that is Y. And then my third ability is going to be F, which is B. And then my final button that I've pretty much tied into things is my select button. Now this is my jump and escape button. So it's basically been linked to a single press for spacebar and a hold for escape. So I can, you know, just constantly press it to jump over obstacles and climb mountains and stuff like that, or I can just hold it to escape my inventory menu or my map or something like that. Pretty simple, easy setup, I think. It's not perfect, but if you were looking for some, you know, generic advice on how to set up your controller, this is probably an easy way for most players. Now, obviously, the biggest downside, I think, for controllers is just the aiming on most of these ranged weapons. So if you're using the ice staff, the fire staff, so if you're using like the fire staff or the ice gloves or the musket or the bow, yeah, you're probably going to have a little bit of a hard time trying to aim this stuff. The reticle does not move smoothly with the controller stick. I would probably look into maybe finding a way to manipulate it whenever I'm using the actual aim button to maybe reduce the sensitivity. But as of right now, I'm not really dealing with that too much. It works for the most part with what I need it to. If I do happen to, you know, be trying to level up my musket or something like that, I will actually just switch to the mouse and the keyboard. It's a little bit inconvenient, but it's still better than using the controller for this. So until they actually come up with some sort of native support in the game for the controller, I think this is probably just the way that I'm going to play it for right now. Maybe I'll look into it, see if there's a better option. But as of right now, I can't really see anything being a dramatic improvement over my current setup. Maybe optimize a little bit better, but yeah, it's not going to be, you know, night and day difference. Like, oh my god, this is just completely next level controller support. No, I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, yeah, make sure your hard drive is correctly mapped to your SSD. And if you don't have an SSD, get one. Even if it's an external SSD, get one. It's still better than a 5200 or a 7200. You know, the spinning disk drives are very slow. They're not good for high graphical settings. They're really not good for anything that requires a lot of asset loading in general. And like I said in Cyberpunk, you know, now I'm saying it in New World, if you are on PC especially, if you are using, you know, a disk drive instead of a solid state drive, you are really behind the times. If you are mostly a controller player like me, you know, you love your console, you just happen to be playing New World because not on console yet, or maybe ever, so you have to make do with what you got. That's just, you know, my controller layout. Hopefully that helps you. It's really not too difficult to map it out. You know, it doesn't really require too much effort. Just, you know, look into it, explore it, just play with the controller settings a little bit, and I think you'll find something that's comfortable for you. But thank you guys for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.